Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Looking forward to Beitza.
Yes.
New Masechta.
New Masechta, brand new Masechta. I don't have my normal look. I mean, this is the Steinsaltz look. It's the same Tzuras Daf, but not exactly. But I'll switch it over shortly. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we were Zoicha to...
Baruch, sorry to interrupt. Can I
Yeah.
ask you a quick question? I think I did this once. I might have done it in yeshiva. But why some people pronounce it Beya
Okay,
and not Beitza?
that's a great question. And a lot of Meforshim are troubled with that. In the Chumash, Beitza refers to the balls, basically, that you have in the human body. And,
Right.
and because of that, even though because of that, they switched it over to Beya to speak Belosha Nikia, to speak not to hint.
I see.
Hint to a part of the human body. Strange reason, but this reason is the Marshal's reason, and it's actually brought in Magen Avram. It's not something I made up. It's like, and I because I always thought that the Torah does say Beitza when it refers to Shluach HaKan, where it says Efrochem Beitzim, but when it refers to crushed Beitzim, it refers to the part of the body.
Yeah. Understood. And Chazal is very particular about, because we learned this in one of the Masechtas when they talk about language, how they so midagdek on not speaking inappropriately.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sharinana Tahora.
Right. Torah. Right. Exactly.
Right.
The other reason I seen that the possible reason is that when you pronounce plural of beitzim, it's pronounced beitzim, but people would say bitzoim, and it means something else. So by switching the word to Aramaic, like Gemara, Beya is Gemara word, is an Aramaic word. You don't run into that problem, but it's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick remark. If you have a chance, send me the name of those two Mishnayos that have no Gemara. I want to look them up later.
Okay.
Later.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Okay, so the Mishnah begins. Beitza, obviously, this Masechta is Masechta Yom Tov. It's also known as Masechta Yom Tov. It has a lot in it. It seems simple, but there's a lot in it. And the more you cook it, the more you get out of this Masechta. That's why it's very popular in the Hasidic crowds and Yeshivish crowds. They learn Beitza as opposed to any other Masechta in Moed. Beitza shenolda b'yontif. You have an egg that was born on yontif. So Beis Shammai says te achel. You are permitted to eat that egg. Beis Hillel says loy te achel. You're not permitted to eat that egg. Now, what would be the problem of eating the egg? So the answer is, we'll see in the Gemara what the problem is. But you can see that this beya was not around at the beginning of yontif. It was not around at the beginning of yontif. And then somehow in Yontif you want to enjoy that egg. So Beis Shammai says it's permitted. Beis Hillel says it's not permitted. Lo te'achel, you're not permitted to eat. So you'll note here that Beis Hillel is more strict as opposed to Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai, another case where the Gemara, the Mishnah says that Beis Shammai is lenient and Beis Hillel is strict. Is Beis Shammai says, or because there's a mitzvah of bal yirah bal yamatzeh. That means you're not allowed to have chametz or yeast in your house. And the difference between seor and chametz is seor could make other things chametz, and chametz is like bread. It can't make other things chametz. So the obligation to get rid of seor in your house, yeast, which is a stronger form of chametz, is bekazayis. As if you have an olive size of yeast in your house, so then you have to get rid of it. The chametz, but if you have a piece of bread, right, then the mitzvah to get rid of it only starts bechakoi sevis, which is a date. We've seen that not the date that you have by Masechta Yuma. It's a smaller date, but that's a kesovis gasa. This is a regular date. So Beis Shammai says the chametz, the size that you'll be obligated to get rid of it is when it's the size of a date. Beis Hillel says zeh v'zeh because both chametz and and Saor, both with a kazayas, which means both of them, based a little strict. Both of them, in order to the obligation to get rid of them is even if it's the size of a kazayas. Another case where Beis Hillel is more stricter than Beis Shammai. The din is that when you slaughter a wild animal or bird, let's say you slaughter a chicken. So there's a din in the Torah that you have to take dirt and cover the blood. So on Yom Tov, one is permitted to shecht, of course, because oichel nefesh, anything related to food, is permitted on Yom Tov. The question is, now, let's say you didn't have dirt to do the mitzvah of covering the blood. So by you digging into the ground and trying to cover the blood, you're actually doing an aveira d'rabbanan. What's the aveira d'rabbanan? Making a hole in the ground. So therefore, so what happens? A person slaughters a chaya or a bird in Yom Tov, a wild animal or a bird. So Beis Shammai Omer, yachpor bedeka v'yichasa. He should dig with his shovel and cover the blood, because that's the mitzvah. You're going to be over, you're transgressing an Isser Rabbanim. The Rabbanim waived the Isser to do the mitzvah of Kisu Hadam, covering the blood. Beis Hillel Omer, Beis Hillel says, Lo yishchait, you're not permitted to shecht. Elim came hoyoloi offer muchan miba'od yom. You're not allowed to shecht only if you have prepared dirt from the day before. In other words, you have an animal. If you do not have dirt to cover the blood, don't shecht, because you're going to be over an Issur Rabbanan to try to dig dirt from the ground to cover the blood. So don't shecht. Only if you have prepared dirt in the corner. Let's say you already took earth out of the ground and you put it into a bowl or something like that, then shecht. So you're not going to be over any siddur. You just take from the bowl the dirt that's in the bowl and pour it over the blood. That's only if you have dirt prepared from the day before. Umaydim, but Beis Hillel would agree. She'im shachat, it's only a din lechatchila, that if b'diavad you did slaughter the bird, then sheyachba bedeka v'yichasa, you could use your shovel and cover the blood, and that's with no choice, they give you the heter, but lechatchila don't shacht. Then the Mishnah says she'efer kira muchanhu, the efer ashes that are found in a smaller type of oven. So you're allowed to use those ashes as covering for the blood. You don't necessarily have to use dirt. If you have ashes prepared, if you have ashes in the small oven, so Beis Hillel will say that better use the ashes, and because that's considered prepared and that's not muktzah. So you can use the ashes that are found in the small oven. The Gemara is going to talk a lot about this Mishnah, and we just skimmed over it over here. So the Gemara begins. B'mai askina. The Gemara, we learned in the Mishnah that there is a beya that was born on Yom Tiv. What's the din with that egg? What are we talking about? What kind of chicken? Ilema, do you want to say? Now, Ilema, do you want to say b'tarnagoylis ho'imedes la'achila? It's a tarnagoylis that's like a chicken that's very fat. You were going to slaughter that chicken, right? So you were going to shecht that chicken. So Beis Shammai says, if before you slaughter the chicken, an egg popped out of the chicken, you're allowed to eat the egg. So my time at the Beis Hillel, what would be the reason of Beis Hillel? Why should that egg be usher to eat? If you would slaughter the chicken, the egg would be inside. You would be permitted to eat the egg, because that whole chicken is what's called muchan, which means it's prepared for food. You had in mind before Yom Tov that you're going to eat this chicken with the egg inside of it, whatever is inside of it. So if we're talking about a chicken that's set aside to be slaughtered for eating purposes, so even if it lays an egg on Yom Tov, what would be the reason of Beis Hillel? Uchla de ifrasu. It's a food that's separated from another food. It's an egg that's separated from a chicken. A food of an egg that's separated from a chicken that you're going to eat. So Ella, with Ella, to explain the machlokes, rather to explain the machlokes between Beishamai and Basilil, is we're talking about betarnagolis hoimedes legadol beitzim. You have this chicken to raise chicks. You wanted to raise chicks with eggs. You didn't have intention to eat the chicken. So the chicken is not prepared. It's something what we call muktzah. You don't plan to eat it, and you set aside. And that chicken gave birth. So the Gemara asks, if that's the case, so my temai de Beishamai, what's the reason of Beishamai that permits to eat the egg? Mukzahu, it was set aside. It's something that came up out of nowhere, and therefore it's muktzah. You should not be allowed to eat the chicken, eat the egg, because that was something that you never had in mind before Yontiv, that you're going to use the food here. So the Gemara says, Umay kushya, what is your question? Dilmul Beishamai les lahu miktzah. Maybe Beishamai doesn't hold of the concept of this type of muktzah, which means that, of course, Beishamai agrees to the type of muktzah. But let us give an example. Would you call this muktzah? A person has an oil lamp, right? And then he lights the oil lamp on Friday night, and then the light goes out. The candle, the lamp burns out. Now you have oil left into the lamp. So are you permitted to take that oil and eat that oil on Shabbos? So Muktzah would say that since you designated that oil to be in the oil lamp, you designated that oil to be used as fuel. Therefore, at the end, if it wasn't used as fuel, you cannot use it on Shabbos. You cannot eat it on Shabbos. But according to Beishamai, and there's an opinion called Rabbi Shimon, who does not hold of this type of muktzah. And this type of muktzah, if you have extra oil in the oil lamp, you're permitted to eat that oil, even though when you started Shabbos, you had no intention to eat that oil. But now that on Shabbos, there's no fire burning in the oil lamp and there's extra oil, you're allowed to take some oil out of that lamp and eat it. So maybe Beishamai doesn't hold a muktzah. So what's your question? So the Gemara says, I still have a question. I still have a question. That there's a very big difference. Afilu man deshari b'muktzah, even though opinion that holds there is permitted, muktzah is permitted, this type of muktzah is permitted, but that is because the oil, when you put the oil into the lamp, the oil was there before Shabbos and Friday. You thought that this oil will be burned up with the lamp burning throughout Shabbos. Some reason the fire went out. So therefore, yes, that is permitted. But even if you hold that's permitted, benoilad osir, you wouldn't agree that if something came into existence without being there on Friday, that's totally way out of your mind. You don't even have a tiny thought that you're going to ever have something like this. So this is something that's born, and therefore it should be osir. My time, Beishamai. So what should be the reason of Beishamai? Okay, because although you want to say he permits muktzah, but maybe Beishamai would say by a noilad, something that was not existent at all, Erev Yom Tiv, should still remain asar. Amar Rav Nachman says, La'olam, really? B'tanagoyles oimedis legadol beitzim. It's a chicken that was going to give birth to, that was set aside, not for eating, but to raise chickens. So therefore, the Tarnagoylos, the chicken you were never going to eat. But udi islay muktzah, if you hold there's a problem of muktzah, then you would go islay noilad. Then you have the problem of noilad. Uda less lay muktzah, less lay noilad. If you don't hold of muktzah, you don't hold of noilad. So let's take that into what Beishamai says. Beishamai, we're saying that Beishamai holds like this shita called Rabbi Shimon. Let's go a little further. Who holds there is no such a thing of muktzah. So the leftover oil in the lamp is permitted to eat. So also, because he holds like Rabbi Shimon, he will also hold not of the concept of noilad, something that came into existence on Yontiv. There's no muktzah. You're allowed to have benefit and eat it. Well, Beis Hillel Rabbi Yehuda, and Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Yehuda, that since Rabbi Yehuda holds that the oil, even though it was in existence in the lamp prior to on Friday, still on Shabbos, it would remain muktzah, even though when the fire of the lamp went out. Of course, Rabbi Yehuda will hold of a concept of noilet, something that was never there before would be definitely be muktzah. So now we have a way to explain the Mishnah. Let's go back into the Mishnah. Beitza shenolda b'yontiv, a beitza that was born on Yontiv. It was not in existence prior. And this came from a chicken that you had no intention to eat the chicken. So the egg popped out. So Beis Shammai says te'achel, because Beis Shammai says you're allowed to eat the egg because it's not muktzah. And Beis Shammai doesn't hold of the concept of noilad, something born, something that was not in existence but prior to Yontif should not be muktzah if it just shows up on Yontif by itself. Beis Hillel says loy teichel, you're not allowed to eat it, and now you know it's muktzah. You're not allowed to even touch it or move it, because as soon as you touch it, it's muktzah. Beis Hillel holds it's muktzah, and you have to wait till after Yontif to touch it and eat it. So Beis Hillel means not to touch it. So basically, Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Shimon. Beis Hillel holds like who? Like Rabbi Yehuda. Comes along the Gemara and says, okay, and that means that this is that Beis Shammai, who holds like Rabbi Shimon, and Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Yehuda, was the explanation of Rav Nachman. So the Gemara asks a question: Umi Amar Rav Nachman Hochi. Did Rav Nachman say such a thing, that Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Shimon and Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Yehuda? V'tanan. But when I have a Mishnah, Masechta Shabbos, where Beis Shammai says, Magbihin me'al hashulchan atzomei suklipin. Let's say you ate meat, right, or chicken on Shabbos, and you ate walnuts. So you're allowed to remove from the table the bones and the klipin, the shells from the walnut, and it's not muktzah, even though this is something, it's something that's not edible, not usable, bones and shells. Nevertheless, Beis Shammai held you're allowed to touch it and move it off the table. Beis Hillel says no. Misalek es hatavla kula umanara. You take off the top of the table, right? What we would call like the plastic of the table, but they took off the top part of the table and umanara, and they would shake it off because Beis Hillel holds it's muktzah. V'Omer Rab Nachman said, my opinion, I have a tradition that the opinions here are reversed. Beis Shammai says you lift it off with the top of the table because Beis Shammai holds it's muktzah and Beis Hillel holds it's not muktzah. Ein lanu ella. My tradition is Beis Shammai Rabbi Yehuda. Beis Shammai is strict like Rabbi Yehuda, and you can't touch the bones and the shells. Beis Hillel Rabbi Shimon. Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Shimon. So even though the Mishnah says one way to this version of what Beis Shammai said and this version what Beis Hillel said, Rav Nachman reversed it, and he said Beis Shammai is strict because Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Shimon, which is easier. It's not muktzah. So here ends the question: how in Masechta Beitza Rav Nachman said that Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Shimon and Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Our Masechta deals with Yom Tov, and when it comes to Masechta Shabbos, Rab Nachman said that Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Yehuda and Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Shimon, just the opposite. How do you explain the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov? So the Gemara says like this: the reason why Rab Nachman had to make a switcheroo over here, Rab Nachman said like this: Gabe Shabbos, in Masechta Shabbos, the Sosum Lotanek Rab Shimon. When Rabbeinu HaKadosh wrote Masechta Shabbos and edited Masechta Shabbos, he put one anonymous Mishnah in the Masechta that aligned itself with the position of Rabbi Shimon. So, and we have a known fact that whenever there's a Stam Mishnah, an anonymous Mishnah, that is the Psak. That's who you have to go like. So therefore, that's who you have to paskin like. So since there's an anonymous Mishnah like Rabbi Shimon, the Tnan, we learned in the Mishnah, Mechatchin es hadluim lifnei habehema v'esanabela lifnei haklavim. Let's say you have gourds, so you're allowed to cut it up for an animal, or let's say an animal that just died on Shabbos, right? You had an animal that died on Shabbos, you're allowed to cut it up, and it's not extra work, and you're allowed to give it to your dogs. Now, when the animal was alive, this is almost like a noilad. basically, because the animal was alive. It wasn't meant to be eaten by dogs. Now that it died on Shabbos, it's not muktzar, and you're allowed to take that nevela, the carcass, and give it to feed to your dogs. So therefore, the author of this anonymous Mishnah must go like Rab Shimon, who doesn't hold of the concept of noilad or anything like that, and there is no muktzah over here. That's why there's an anonymous Mishnah who holds like Rab Shimon in Masechta Shabbos. So moikim lo Beis Hillel ki Rabbi Shimon. That's why we have to say that Beis Hillel, who we always go like Beis Hillel, in Masechta Shabbos, Beis Hillel took the view of Rabbi Shimon. So you get it? Beis Hillel, there's an anonymous Mishnah that says like Rabbi Shimon. So we know in Masechta Shabbos you have to paskin like Rabbi Shimon. So in order to make Beis Hillel like the one we paskin, we also say that Beis Hillel aligns itself with the position of Rab Shimon only in Masechta Shabbos. Now
That's why he was machmer, because of this fact.
That's why
Usually he's mikil, but he was because of the rule of the Star Mishnah. Is that right?
So very good. So you're going to see now in Masechta Shabbos we go lenient. So in Masechta Shabbos we always go like Rab Shimon. So Beis Hillel goes like Rab Shimon. In Masechta Beitza, the anonymous Mishnah will say that we go like Rabbi Yehuda. That's why Rab Nachman said that Beis Hillel goes like Rabbi Yehuda. Now it's going to come to the obvious question. We're dealing with muktzah. So why is there a difference? Why did Rabbeinu HaKadosh say one place by Masechta Shabbos you go lenient, and by Yom Tov you go strict? The Gemara is going to ask that question. But first, the Gemara establishes that in Masechta Shabbos you always have to go like Rab Shimon, and Beis Hillel aligns himself with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Aval, we go to Amud Beis. Aval Gaba Yom Tov, when it comes to Yom Tov, the Sosum Latanik Rabbi Yehuda. In our Masechta, when it comes to which deals with Yom Tov, the anonymous Mishnah aligns himself with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Ein mevakim eitz. Now you're allowed to light a fire to cook or whatever, but the Mishnah says Ein mevakim eitzim. You're not allowed to chop wood min hakoiris, from beams that are set aside for building. They weren't when you on Erev Yom Tov, they were not set aside to be firewood. On Shabbos, you can't, on Yom Tov, you can't just chop the wood and make them use them for your fire. Not from a beam that broke on Yom Tov. Let's say you had a beam in your house that fell. So then to use that beam and say, okay, now I'm going to use it for firewood on Yom Tov, no, because it wasn't prepared before Yom Tov. This is called a noilad, right? It's something that you never even dreamt of, that you're going to be using it as firewood at the start of Yom Tov. Therefore, on Yom Tov, you can't use it. So the anonymous Mishnah is aligning with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Therefore, that's why Rab Nachman had to say, Moikim lo Beis Hillel Rabbi Yehuda. That's why Rab Nachman had to align Beis Hillel's opinion like Rabbi Yehuda. And that makes sense. It's a noilad, it's a brand new thing, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not permitted to be used. So the Gemara says, wait a second, Michte, let us see. Man sosmei lemasnisen. Who is the one that put these anonymous mishnayos? Who put the anonymous mishnayos in Masechta Shabbos and the anonymous mishnayos in Masechta Beitza? Rebbe. That is the opinion of Rebbe. So the question is, my shna b'Shabbos the sosam long Rabbi Shimon, or my shna b'Yom Tov the sosam long Rabbi Yehuda? Why is it that in Masechta Shabbos the Rebbe paskined by putting the anonymous Mishnah like Rabbi Shimon that there is no such a thing of noilad, right? Rabbi Shimon holds there's no such a thing of noilad, and when it comes to Yom Tov, we're going strict and say, noilad is muktzah. Why? So the Gemara says, Amrei, the answered, the Shabbos, the Chamire, Shabbos, which is already strict, they're not going to come to make light of Shabbos. Shabbos is always known to be a strict holy day. Sasam long Rab Shimon Demekel. Then we could go lighter. We can make the anonymous opinion on Shabbos to go lenient that there is no noilad on Shabbos. Yom Tov, the kill. Yom Tov, you already have some light. It's lighter already because we already permit you to cook on Yom Tov. People will come if you once again you're allowed to cook on Yontif, people will make light of the whole Yontif. Therefore, when it comes to muktzah, we go strict. Sasum like Rabbi Yehuda the machmir. So that's why in Masechta Beitza we go like Rabbi Yehuda, that's strict, and Beis Hillel went like Rabbi Yehuda. So the question, so that's where the Gemara left off. The Gemara is leaving off right now. Noilad, it depends. If it's Shabbos, Noilad is permitted because we paskin like Rab Shimon. When it comes to Yontiv, Noilad is Asar because we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda.
So Rabbanan made like an extra geder, so we don't make for Yontiv. Shabbos is already known.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Right. So therefore, I guess the concept of this Noilad is a made up Chazal muktzah.
Yeah,
right?
It's going an extra mile. It's not the same because muktzah is something that you don't use for Shabbos, and Noilad is something that is not even prepared. It goes the extra length to say that it's even more strict.
Right.
It's not prepared. You can't use it.
It was just came out in existence. So again, a good example of something like this would be like we had this once before with if a keli breaks, a normal vessel that was used to drink, and then it breaks, and now you want to use it for something else. That's
Rabbi
called Noilad.
Yehuda said there was no lot. You can't. Right.
You can't use it.
Right.
So the Gemara challenges this. And this is not going to be the way to explain the Mishnah. This is not. We're going to end up refuting this. But my akimta, what did you interpret the Mishnah? It's a chicken that was raised. You only intended it to use for eggs. And the problem is a muktzah of noilad. So ihachi, if so, ademi palgi bebeitza li palgi betarnagoylus. Why are they arguing by the egg? Let's have the same argument by the chicken. What would be the argument by the chicken? The chicken, you originally set it aside that you're never going to eat this chicken. This chicken is to raise chicks. But now on Yom Tov, you decide to shecht it. And so that becomes like a noilad. So why do they have to argue? Beis Shammai will say you could shecht it, and Beis Hillel says you can't shecht it. So why do they have to argue in the egg, rather argue in the chicken? So the answer is because the chicken, if you tell me that you could shecht this chicken, okay, but if you tell me that you could shecht the egg, that goes one step further to teach you how extreme is the opinion of Beis Shammai. The Gemara says the reason why we're arguing in the egg is because to teach you the extreme position of Beis Shammai, the benoilad, something that was totally born, not the chicken, but the egg itself. Shari, you're permitted to eat the egg. So Gemara asks, why don't you ask this question? Let them argue in the chicken itself, and the chicken will teach you the extreme position of Beis Hillel, that even the chicken itself, you're not allowed to shech. Even the chicken that was here before Yom Tov, but since at the beginning of Yom Tov you said I'm going to use it for eggs and not to eat, and you can't change your mind. Let's let them argue by the chicken to teach you how extreme Beis Hillel is. The b'muktzah asri, that even b'muktzah it still remains asri. You can't change your mind. If you want to say koyach dehet teira adif, the reason why we're arguing on the eggs, because if we're going to show the extreme position, I'd rather show the extreme position of Beis Shammai, who gives leniencies. So then you show how far this Tana Beis Shammai is lenient, but you don't want to show to strict. That's a chiddush. That's a novelty to say that he was so lenient. Even to the egg he was so lenient. But to go and tell you how strict somebody is, that's not a novelty, because anybody could say something is asur because they don't know the answer. So we always try in the Mishnah to, if we have a choice, to say how extreme was each position. The Mishnah will choose to teach you the extreme position of the person that's lenient, because the person that's lenient showed that he went through the whole sugya or whatever, and he has a deep understanding, and he can be extremely lenient. So the Gemara says still doesn't like it. The niflik b'tervayo. We should have the Mishnah talking about both parts of the chicken and the egg. Tanagoylis hoimedes legadol beitzim. Let the Mishnah say a chicken that's raised for eggs. The chicken itself, ubeitzasem, regarding the egg, Beis Shammai omen te'achel, you could eat both the chicken and the egg. Ubeis Hillel omen lo te'achel, you can't eat it. So it wouldn't take much to teach you both positions, the extreme position of Beit Shammai and the extreme position of Beit Hillel, by just saying he ubeit sasa, by adding one little word. So therefore, the Gemara really does not like the way Rav Nachman interpreted our Mishnah. So how are you going to explain this machloikis? This is a very interesting way that we're coming to right now. How do you explain the machloikis between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel regarding the egg that was born on Yontif? So Ella Amar Rabba. Rabba said, "La'olam really betarnagolis ha'omedes la'achila." We have a chicken that was set aside that you were going to slaughter this chicken. Uviyamtiv shecholies acha hashabas askinan, and we're talking about on Yontif that fell on a Sunday. Okay, imagine Shabbos, and then you have Yontif right after that. So what's the problem with the egg? Umishim hachana, because the egg was prepared on Shabbos. In other words, the egg was being made in the chicken's body on Shabbos. And therefore, the Torah says a very interesting thing, and it's Medoraisa. And that's why it's called Hachana de Rabba. Uksava Rabba holds, Kol Beitza, any egg, the Misyalda Ha'idana, that was born today, let's say it was born on Sunday, Me'esmol Gamrala, it was fertilized, it was finished yesterday. It was completed the day before. So it was completed on Shabbos. So what's wrong if it was completed on Shabbos? Rabba Latame, Rabba goes according to his reasoning. The Amar Rabba says, Maidiksiv, what is the meaning of this pasuk? When the Torah says by the Mon, on Friday, that you should prepare your food that you're going to eat on Shabbos. On Friday, you're supposed to prepare your food that you're going to eat on Shabbos. So we darshan choil, if Friday is a weekday, meichin l'Shabbos, it would be you're allowed to prepare for Shabbos. The choil, if Friday if the day before of Yom Tov is like a Tuesday and Yom Tov is Wednesday, meichin l'Yom Tov, you're allowed to prepare for Yom Tov. But the ein Yom Tov meichin l'Shabbos, Yom Tov is not allowed to prepare for Shabbos. The ein Shabbos mechina l'Yom Tov, and Shabbos cannot be something that prepares for Yom Tov. So basically, in this case, Yom Tov coming out on Shabbos, Yom Tov coming out on Sunday. So the egg was made when? B'dei Shemayim. It was made on Shabbos. Therefore, the egg was prepared and manufactured on Shabbos in the chicken's body. So when it was born on Yom Tov, this is unprepared food. And midoraisa, you're not allowed to eat it. Because the holiness of a Sudas Yom Tov or a Suda Shabbos means that you have to say that this food I'm going to eat for that meal. That's the Torah says. Every meal that you're going to eat has to be, you have to say that this food I'm going to prepare for this meal. So since you didn't say that, since this was made inside the chicken's body on Shabbos, so when you come to Yom Tov, this is food that was not prepared for that Yom Tov meal. And therefore, Beis Hillel was strict and said, you cannot eat that food. Beis Shammai doesn't hold of this drasha. Beis Shammai says, no, the Torah only told you to prepare baking before Shabbos, but if it was made by Hashem, that's not a problem of hachana, of preparing.
It's only Yoraisa because you have Erev Tavshilin, obviously.
Right. Well, we're going to get to that. But you
Right. It says Yom Tov can't prepare for Shabbos, but we do.
Erev Tavshilin. That's why you make an Erev Tavshilin.
Yes. But here it's Hashem is making it, right? Hashem is making the egg inside the body of the chicken. So therefore, it's not prepared by human hands, and therefore it would be asur midaraisa according to Beis Hillel to eat that egg.
And even Rabbah used the example of Mun, which was also Hashem.
No, right, but that's the pasuk. That's the source pasuk.
The source, right.
The source pasuk says that on Friday you have to prepare all your food on Shabbos, says Hashem.
Right.
So if you're going to cook them on and you bake them on, make sure you do it on Friday because you're not allowed to bake and cook on Shabbos. So we darshan that even if Hashem is not allowed to make it. And this is called Hachana de Rabbah, which means the preparation of Rabbah, which means that it's Doraisa. So now the Gemara asks a couple of questions. Okay. Elmalei Abaya, Elamiata, Yom Tov be'alma tishtri. If Yom Tov comes out on a Tuesday, right, then it should be permitted to eat the egg, right? Because it wasn't prepared on Shabbos. It was prepared on Monday, on a weekday. So what's the problem with that? So Gemara says, Gezerah, that case would be Gezerah Mishum Yom Tov Acha Shabbos. The Gezerah of not eating eggs that were born on Yom Tov that is because of a gezerah, because you might eat the egg on a yontiv that occurred after Shabbos. So therefore, and yontiv, that egg from a yontiv that was on Sunday is daraisa. You're not allowed to eat that egg. Midaraisa. So therefore, any egg born on yontiv, no matter when yontiv comes out, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, doesn't matter. You're never allowed to eat the eggs that were born on yontiv.
What's the difference between the gezerah and the hachana of Rabbah? What's the difference? The same thing.
Oh, but because the Torah said, let's look at the drasha. The Torah says the ain't Shabbos mechina liyontiv. Something that's made on Shabbos, which is the egg, cannot be used on yontiv for Sunday. But choil, something that was made on the weekday.
The weekday.
So
Okay.
it was made. It was manufactured in the chicken stomach. Should be allowed to be used on yontiv, right? V'chol mechel yontiv.
Right.
If it was yontiv is on a Tuesday, so it was made on a Monday. You should be allowed to use it.
Okay.
But the Rabbanan said no, because Xera of every yontiv, because of that yontiv that coming out on a Sunday. So the Gemara, just two more questions and then we'll stop. Shabbos, the Gemara says, Shabbos, the Alma Tistri. Every Shabbos it should be prepared. Every Shabbos always every Friday is a weekday. So if a Beya is born on Shabbos, it should always be permitted. And we know that the Gemara understood that even an egg born on a regular Shabbos is usher. So the Gemara says, Gzera b'shem Shabbos achar yontiv. There's a Gzera that of Shabbos falling after yontiv. Let's say there was yontiv on Friday, and then if the egg was born on Shabbos, so when was the egg prepared? The day before on yontiv, on Friday. So that would be an usher daraisa diga egg. So therefore, they assered every egg born on Shabbos because of the gzera of Shabbos that comes out right after yontiv, which was on a Friday. So again, if an egg that was let's break it down into three parts. Let's say a regular Shabbos, an egg was born on Sunday morning. It was made on Shabbos. So you're going to tell me you're not allowed to eat it? Of course not. Of course you're allowed to eat it if it's born on Sunday morning, even though the egg was made on Shabbos, because a weekday meal, you don't have to have kedusha prepared. It can be prepared on Shabbos. You can eat it on Sunday. That's totally permitted. On Shabbos falling after Yom Tiv, let's say Yom Tiv was Friday, Shabbos is next day, or Yom Tiv on a Sunday. Those days when the egg is born, it's doraisa. So that's another step. And the third possibility is in every Shabbos, every Yom Tiv, the egg is only asa d'Rabbanan. So you get it? We have three steps. It's mutter, asa d'Oraisa, or asa d'Rabbanan. Okay, only because that in Shabbos meal has to have a kedusha. It's prepared beforehand. So one more question: Umi gazrinin, do you actually make gezeres when you shouldn't make gezeres? Well, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Hashoichet es tarnagolis. You shechted a chicken that you're supposed to shecht, right? Umatzu ba beitzin gemuras, and by the way, if an egg is born on Shabbos, Rashi explains that people ate raw eggs. I wanted to point that out. You didn't cook. Obviously, you were not allowed to cook that egg. But if it wasn't for the gezerah, you'd be allowed to just eat it and swallow it. But now the Gemara says, "Vatanya, we learned in the Brisa, you shechted a chicken, and you found inside the chicken complete eggs that you could eat. Mutaris la'achlam b'yantiv. You're permitted to eat them in yantiv. Vim isa, if you're on the path of always making gezeras, ligzar mishum hanach to mismialdim b'yameim. Just like eggs that are born in yantiv are asar. So if you shech the chicken and find an egg inside, you should not be allowed to eat it. Gezerah of what? Maybe the egg, you might eat an egg that was born on yantiv. So we should never allow you to eat eggs that come from a chicken on yantiv, even if you shech the chicken and you find an egg inside. So the Gemara says that is a little extending it. Amalei beitzin gemuras b'mei imam, finding an edible egg in the mother's stomach. Milsu d'loy shchichihi. It's not a common occurrence. Umilsu d'loy shchicha loy gazru rabbanan. Rabbanan did not make the gezerah. It's just such a non-common occurrence, so we don't make a gezerah for that. So that you're permitted, if you slaughtered a chicken and you found eggs inside of it, you can eat it. If the egg was born, then you're not allowed to eat it, even if it's a regular yontiv, because of the Gezerah of the Yontiv that comes after Shabbos. And that is the
Mhm.
opinion of Beis Hillel, and it's based on the Daraisa, and that explains the Mishnah. Okay,
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
very good.
Shkoyach,
That's
thank
Hashem.
you.
Okay, I think we can
Good
do Sunday,
Shabbos.
like a Shabbos. I think
Yes.
for those that are available, we can do Sunday, Bez Hashem, and
Yes.
then we'll try to
Good
make
day.
up the time after the Yontiv.
So see
Okay,
you.
very good. Like a Tanakh.
Gute Nacht, good Shabbos, see you
Shabbos,
Sunday.
Shabbos. Okay,
Bye bye, Bob.
bye-bye.